You're most welcome back to Gmodism. We are back into the depth. Or we are from the depth. In any case, today we're going to test about Spall Liners for HESH and heat shells. If you don't know what Spall Liners is, basically if a shot comes in here, like that, a HESH or heat shot, hits this thing, then a heat or HESH shell will spawn fragments on the other side here. And I don't know, I couldn't find good data on this, but I think it was the case that heat rounds did not care much about the spall lining, but HESH shells did. And that it is some kind of equation that basically takes all the layers the armor has gone through, where the largest emphasis was on the last layer, and from that layer we spawn the fragments. So in theory, having a spall liner for HESH shells would in that case make it so that the spalls that spawn from a layer that has this will be lower damage than the spalls that spawns from a layer that doesn't have this. And so I basically did some stuff here. This first layer is one layer of metal and one layer of wood. In this scenario, it would be, I guess, pretty important that we have like a spall liner. It should actually matter kind of much, because we only have two layers, and one of them, and the last one, is wood. Here we have a more normal armor, 2 meters of metal and 1 meter here of spall liner. And this would of course be weaker spalls. This would indeed be a weaker protection, so the spalls would be stronger, theoretically. And here we have a layer with no spall liner, and they all have the same air gap. We're going to try and remove the air gap. No, we can't remove the air gap. I mean, we should try and make the air gap twice as wide as well. But in theory, this layer with the spall liner should be performing better than this. Thing is, does this actually matter in the real world, or does it not? And that's what we're going to test. So basically, we're going to set up a nice shell here. We're gonna begin with a HESH shell. There we have it, a simple HESH shell. And let's see what type of... we have 200 millimeters. I think 200 millimeters... Let's say 250 millimeters. That's probably a pretty standard HESH shell. That's not the spam HESH, but a decent thing. So, APS has been reloaded. We can see it sticks here. So we're gonna try this area. And now they contaminate each other's result a little bit. Now I need to turn down repairs. Yeah, well this is a problem. Here we have this one. We can't see much difference, can we? Because it's like, it spreads too much. So we need to repair them between each blast. Alright, so it goes, the spalls, with 1 meter of spall liner, it goes 1 block in. Now 2 blocks in. Kinda, it's so wide. We're trying to gather some results here, so 2 blocks in, maximum. And that seems to be the data we get each time here. So the next one, if we have 2 meter of metal. Oh wow, okay. That's 3 blocks into that armor behind it. 2 blocks, but a larger chunk, isn't it? Yeah. It's so random, it depends a lot how the fragments fall. But it feels like it does... No? What the... It's really hard to measure results on this thing. It's like we have to throw in 100 rounds or something. If we can just... We might need to set up another type of test. We can only get some initial guesses from this thing. So this should be the absolute worst with no Spall Liner. Whoops. Let's see, 3 blocks. No, that's, yeah. That's 3 blocks in. To be honest, it doesn't seem to be much of a difference. So if we set this to... Let's set this to like a big shell, 450. Something like that. See what happens. Well, that's blowing a hole on the outside armor too, okay. And this then. It feels like this one gets more damage, like where we have 2 meter of metal and 1 meter of Spall Liner. It feels like that. And all of these, of course, have a little bit different, like, armor stats. Ooh, and the HESH actually goes through this armor too. It seems to be... I think that's worse. I think it's dealing more damage on that. It's not a big difference. And it can just be random results here. But it's like it's removing a smaller portion of that cube thing. Because now it's going through here. It didn't really go through the first one, did it? But maybe these HESHs are so big it doesn't matter too much. Who knows? Well, what if we go with some pretty low caliber? Like, say, let's say 75 millimeters. Some pretty small shells for being this game, at least. So now we can see 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't deal damage very quickly. And that's some thicker protection. Now, how bad is this then? It doesn't seem to matter too much, actually. That's pretty interesting. Well, I think we should swap this for a heat shell. You never know if I mix them up or something. So we're gonna have a shape charge heat. We're gonna have to a, let's see here. The maximum penetration factor seems to be most valuable in general. Whoops, so the small caliber, that's still a, let's see here. Designer mode, refill, APS, there we go. There we go. Here we have the... So 1. It's going pretty far, doesn't it? Let's do just 3. Very similar. Wait, it seems that... Huh. And again, these armors, they are quite different in general. That should be kept in mind. But now we had the small caliber. Let's jump up and try the higher ones and see what we can gather from this. Now this is going to go straight through, by the way. All of them. So we can't really compare with that. You know, I think I'll need to prepare a little slab of ammo here. That's kind of a little bit larger, because we need to, like, from this, it's hard to gather results. It seems that Spall Liners does indeed help a little bit, but what they are helping with, it's not like a big change. It's just a small little improvement, nothing more. So from these results I've gathered right now, it seems that Spall Liners are not a bad idea. It's just that they're not gonna save the world or anything like that. But we can prepare it with some more big stat stuff and see what gives. Right, so these stone poles represent some type of armor that is, no, more like internal components slash internal components armor, so like interior armor or internal components. So here we just have a straight regular block of 5 meters of metal. If we shoot like that, we can see we get through quite a bit, but it seems we're not going through the entire armor at this particular level. And it's so different. Oh god, damn it, we got through one time. It seems to be pretty rare that we get through completely. So if we add a Spall Liner to this area, we will add the armor. We would add some armor too, doing that. And this is heat. And I do suspect that heat doesn't really care about Spall Lining. And that could be easily tested. If this entire slab is suddenly replaced with wood, if the armor piercing value is the same, yeah, they just don't care about Spall Liners. So I think we can pretty safely say that heat shells absolutely does not care about Spall Liners, or if they do, it's to such a little effect that Spall Liners or not will not matter. Now there are many ways to defend from heat or HESH like that, and Spall Liners is only true for HESH, but not for heat. And I already kind of knew this, or I thought I knew this, but I feel like there is a lot of data in the game, and there is a lot of tips, and there is a lot of opinions with people saying such and such, and saying that no, you can't do that because that is objectively wrong, and then it turns out their information is like outdated or not true or something like that. So in general, I think it feels best to just test ourselves and see, see the results. Right, so for heat, it seems that the Spall Lining just doesn't matter much. It's not a thing. If it is a thing, the effect is so small, it can be disregarded. Alright, so how about HESH? Because this is the thing I've heard where Spall Liners actually does matter. And we can see we're not getting very deep here. And that's probably because we need thicker armor. We need to have the spalls spawn closer to this to actually do a damage we can measure. Now it feels like that. It's very like flat spread. 2 blocks in seems to be the most it gets. When it not shoots some rare offshot, that is. Absolute maximum 3 blocks in. Alright. If we exchange like half of these layers with wood, we should see a notable difference, right? This looks kind of worse. Or more like the same. Whoops. Now we shot twice. There we go. It doesn't seem to matter, does it? Huh. Max, no, it's the same. It's the same damage pattern. All right, that's interesting. I do want to try out my checkerboard. It's not like I invented this. It's just that I've been using it a lot, and this pattern, because of that, has been associated with some of my builds, like the Draconia. But it's actually from Jono 1928 that made this, and by now everyone kind of agrees that just layering wood and metal in straight lines is basically as good, so it's not really worth the bother. And this is not how we would use it anyways. By the way, I just wanted to see if there was some unforeseen effect. Okay, that doesn't seem to do anything. In that case, I wonder what happens if we go and do like some heavy armor here. If we have heavy armor as big slabs of interior armor, will the spalls be a lot stronger? And it seems it doesn't really matter. Okay. So, just increasing this distance would theoretically be so much better. Yeah, you can see here. Oh man, no. Something happened there. Well, that's probably just a kind of ish lucky shot, wasn't it? Most of the time it doesn't even go very deep at all. I wish I had some insta repair button that I can just click to auto repair. Not do this. Pretty handy. That would be pretty handy. Right. In that case, it honestly seems that for big HESH, it doesn't matter with Spall Liners. And especially if we shoot this one thing there. This should be the worst case scenario for HESH, right? And you can see now it's dealing more damage, it does. It does go deeper. Just having a heavy armor area. And now, it is true that the blocks we use here, the internal armor we use to suck this up, they're pretty strong. They are pretty strong, so that should be... we should keep that in mind. And if Spall Liners work well for this caliber, this should be much better. And it really isn't. It's kind of the same. It's not a big difference. Well then. We should of course change the caliber here. Like, this is some pretty big shots. Let's do something more reasonable, like 150 millimeters. We already concluded that the speed doesn't matter too much. It kinda doesn't damage, doesn't destroy the next layer. Alright, good to know. So if we removed this and have an increased gap from where they spawn instead, it's kinda same damage, right? Maybe a little bit less because of the increased distance. Alright. So if we had one layer of heavy armor just in front of this with this shell, then it should deal more damage to the layer behind, yeah? It does, maybe. Or maybe not. But not a big deal. And if we, for example, have 1 meter here, no, 1 meter there, just left the layer open here, and have a Spall Liner in 2 meters, then it should not be able to damage the second layer at all. Yeah, okay. Well, that's interesting. That's quite interesting indeed. So, from this, I guess we can conclude that Spall Liners from HESH, having Spall Liners against HESH helps a little bit, but not much. Like, not much. It helps a little bit. But it's only noticeable when having smaller shells, and having an increased air gap is as important as having a Spall Liner. So having 2 meters of free air will give you about the same results as having 1 meter of free air and 1 layer of Spall Lining. So it seems that Spall Lining is not a bad practice. It's decent to have, but it also doesn't seem to matter enough that you should roast someone's armor for not having a Spall Liner. But in general, it can be a good idea, I think, to put some wood behind metal, just to increase the health points and not make those health points too squishy. This goes through here too. Yeah, it doesn't delete the second layer, that's good. And if we add this like this, now we can see it actually deletes a block behind it. Can it do that again? No. You can see it's a small difference. 1 block dead. And if we add 1 layer of Spall Lining and repair this thing, now it deleted the block anyways. I can't say for sure this helps, or if we just gotten some random numbers. It's just that we've seen sometimes, yeah, it's more rare that it deletes a layer behind, but it happens. It may be too rare, but it's so hard to actually see a difference. Now, this armor is also weaker. What happens if we have 2 meters of metal, 1 Spall Liner? Because the previous one got some armor buff too, of 2 layers there, I suppose. And they never damage through, do they? They did once, okay, they did. It feels like we have to do this like all day to even see some result. So it's a very small result, if any. Anyways, what happens if we remove this then? 1 increased area. Well, that increased area seems to have done us very well. Now we're getting through even more rarely. It seems that it's possible that having this additional air gap is more valuable than having a Spall Liner. So I guess we could use wood as Spall Lining. It's not bad. It can help probably for smaller shells, but when we're talking like 300-400 millimeter plus, it just doesn't seem to be measurable results at all. You can see 3 meters here. Yeah, probably it's just that having a Spall Liner, it just seems that it won't do much. However, just having wood behind some other material inside an armor can be a good way to tank some health points and to gain natural floatiness to a very low cost. Because remember that wood blocks are floaty, they are not as floaty as alloy, but you know, these 5 beams cost as much as 1 alloy beam. So it's a cheap filler to get floatiness. Now let's see here. What's the buoyancy on this thing? 130. What's the buoyancy on this thing? 110. So it has pretty comparable buoyancy to lightweight. It is lighter though, so it drags down the ship less in weight, but it's so small it doesn't matter much. But anyways, I don't know. Do you think there needs to be an addition added to these tests? Or do you think this was insightful? My conclusion so far is that Spall Liners doesn't really provide much of a difference. There may be a small difference for smaller HESH shells, but no difference for heat shells that's measurable at all. I think I can see a small difference for HESH, but it's so small that you should probably not spend too much time thinking about spall lining and just use wood lining inside stuff more as a way to tank health points and floatiness than assure spall lining protection. Now I don't know, maybe we'll need to redo this test. Maybe this block of stone, like poles, just have too much health points for us to even notice anything. Like each of this is 942 health, 16 armor. So I guess the spalls would deal something really soft, like, I don't know, cram components or fuel engine components or something like that. They'll probably deal more damage to those. So there might be a bigger difference if we have another area as like a meat layer. But generally, it seems also that an additional meter of air is basically as good as a layer of spall lining, and having both is of course advantageous, but it doesn't matter so much. I don't know, maybe that was a bad conclusion, but honestly it's hard to see results when we do this type of test. We'd almost need to... Because the fragments spawn so randomly, it really depends. I don't know. What do you think about this? Please write me in the comments. Do you think that my conclusion of this is entirely wrong? Is Spall Liner still an important thing, or can we just leave it and say that lining stuff with wood inside adds health points and floatiness for sheep? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you in a future video. This is your host Gmodism. We're signing out.